has been rumored for weeks that the Atlanta Hawks are looking to move on from Trae Young and trade him to his new home, and they no longer see him as their franchise cornerstone with the emergence of Jalen Johnson and his absolute all-star, all-NBA caliber season that he's having. And it had been rumored for so long, there have been a lot of reports coming out, but today we got the big fish from Shams, who said that Atlanta and Trae Young's agents will be looking to a new home to move Trae Young to. They'll be working together to find a new home for Trae Young, one that could use his talents and one that could benefit Atlanta in the long run. And at the end of the day, Trae Young is probably going to be moved before the trade deadline. I'm not sure if it's going to wait until the offseason. I expect the move to be made sooner rather than later because Trae Young does have to get paid in the offseason. He is due for a contract extension, and I think any team that's trading for him wants to really see how he fits alongside their team. So today in this video, I've proposed 5 mock trades, more so 5 teams that could use Trae Young's talents and have the assets to go and get him. Albeit he isn't costing too much right now from what reports are saying, with some teams viewing him as a negative asset, but there are definitely some teams around the league that could use Trae Young's talents and his point guard play as an elite playmaker and shot maker. Let's get into it. Our first team up, we have the Toronto Raptors, and this is actually a pretty interesting trade. The Raptors are in need of point guard play. I don't think Quickly is going to be their long-term solution, and they had been playing better and far above their usual caliber of play this season, albeit they have flown out. And I think a primary trade with them wouldn't involve necessarily trading Emmanuel Quickly, but it'd be something like RJ Barrett and Jakob Poeltl for Trae Young. I'm not too sure about the pick details. That's not something I'm going to really focus on, because from what the reports have said, it doesn't seem many teams are willing to give up draft capital for Trae Young. I'm not sure how true that is, or if a team is desperate enough to attach 2 or 3 first-round picks, which I don't think is true. But from my point of view, this is a pretty fair trade where you're matching salary and you're providing an intriguing player in RJ Barrett to the Raptors. Maybe they prefer Emmanuel Quickly, and I don't think the Raptors would hesitate to give up Quickly in such a deal. But if you're the Toronto Raptors, you're acquiring a star point guard to pair alongside your really good wings. Now this does leave you really fucking thin at center. You're not really going to have a center. You're going to have to probably play small ball center. But it's a trade that kind of lets you have that freedom to move maybe a few more pieces on your team, because the Raptors are really deep in that wing position. Maybe move a wing for like a Walker Kessler or Jarrett Allen. Whatever happens. And Raptors seem like one of those teams in the East that if they acquire another star level player, they will be able to make real noise in the East, because the East is pretty wide open right now. The Pistons are the 1 seed, Knicks are the 3 seed now, Celtics are the 2 seed, so it seems pretty wide open. I think the Raptors can get really aggressive here, and this is something that really should intrigue Toronto. And this isn't a bad trade package you're getting from the Raptors if you're Atlanta. Maybe you want a first round pick, but I don't think you could really be... beggars can't be choosers. I think maybe you could attach Grady Dick in here as well to make it a little bit more enticing. Our next team up is the Washington Wizards, who I think is probably Trae Young's favorite landing spot right now, and it's actually what a lot of people are predicting, with reports coming out that the Washington Wizards are pretty interested in adding Trae Young to their core nucleus, and they seem to be a team who thinks with the high draft pick this year and the addition of Trae Young and the progression of their star Alex Sarr could make a real push next season. And their trade is pretty much whatever they want to give up, because you can give up Chris Middleton and Corey Kispert and that gets the job done salary wise. You probably will have to attach an asset here like a draft pick to maybe outbid some other teams, but I think if you're Washington, it's not something that you're going to hesitate on. You're probably going to be willing to give up that 2026 OKC pick. You obviously don't want to give up any of your first round picks, especially in the near future or the late future. So I don't think that's something that's on the table. Maybe they want Bub Carrington. I don't think you're going to hesitate to really give up Bub Carrington in this situation. Maybe you want to keep him, but I think this is a really good trade for Washington, because you're really buying low in Trae Young. And it's not like, oh my god, we're giving up so much for a star player. No, you're more than likely just going to give up salary filler and maybe a protected first round pick. And if you're the Wizards, you're okay with that, because if it doesn't work out, you don't have to keep Trae Young and you don't lose too much in that situation. It's something that's really worth a shot. If you're Atlanta, I also don't think you could really you probably aren't too happy with the return or the potential return, especially with the trade I have proposed with Middleton, Corey Kispert in a 2026 first. Maybe you want a young asset, but even then, I'm not sure what your direction would be if you do trade Trae Young. Obviously, I think McCollum or Middleton, whichever player is involved in the trade gets rerouted, but I'm not too sure. But I definitely think this is something that Washington should look to do and should look to be aggressive in a deal like this, because this is your chance to really buy low and add a star wing like AJ DeBonsa or Cameron Boozer, maybe even DP, because DP could probably play alongside Trae Young. But I definitely think this is a very interesting trade. Next team up I have is the Heat, and I actually have two different trades for them because it gets a little difficult with what you want to do, especially with the Miami Heat. I think the Miami Heat are a team that could really use Trae Young's talent, especially with Tyler Hero out, and you have the infrastructure to really hide his, deficiencies on defense. I think a deal would include Terry Rozier. He's a bum. He's not playing. He's not going to play probably ever again. And the two baselines for the trade is Terry Rozier and Norman Powell, which is one of the trades, and maybe some draft capital. I don't think you really need too much draft capital for Trae Young. I think Atlanta would be pretty alright with this deal. I know Terry Rozier is like a super duper negative asset right now, but there isn't really much you could do. You have to take Terry Rozier, and I don't think if you're Miami, you want to give up Andrew Wiggins. You're definitely not giving up Bam. You're definitely not giving up Tyler Hero. So you kind of just have to give up Terry Rozier, and Atlanta has to be okay with that. Maybe if you're Miami, you probably do have to attach a first if you're giving up Terry Rozier's contract. It's such a bad contract. And the other trade we had was Terry Rozier, Simone Fontecchio, and Davion Mitchell. And I definitely think you're gonna have to attach a first round here because you're not getting that kind of go-to asset like what Norman Powell is. And I think either of these trades you'd be happy with. I think it's just based on preference on what you really value, because you can either maximize Norman Powell's value as a 32-year-old. He probably isn't going to get better than this. He probably isn't going to be too good for too much longer. And it's a fun trade. It's a good trade. For Miami, I think Miami's also one of those teams that's probably a star away from being a real threat in the East. For our next team, we have Minnesota Timberwolves, who have been in desperate need for point guard play for like the last 2 seasons, even going as far as to trade up for Rob Dillingham, and it just hasn't worked out for them. I think they could really, Trae Young to me is a great fit there, because just based off the infrastructure they have there, he's going to have to defer to Anthony Edwards. He's not going to be the star of that team, right? He has Rudy Gobert on the back end. He has Jaden McDaniels. Anthony Edwards is a great defender as well. You have good defensive players on the roster. And I think a deal probably surrounding Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, Mike Conley, and Rob Dillingham gets the job done. We're giving up a ton of depth, which is why I kind of had 2 versions of this trade. The other one being Mike Conley, Julius Randle, and Rob Dillingham. Instead of Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo, you give up Julius Randle. But either trade is kind of, it's a bit tough, especially the first one where you're giving up Naz Reid, Dante, Mike, and Rob, because you are losing basically all your depth. You're giving up 3 key bench players and Rob Dillingham. But it's a deal that gives you a really good starting 5 with Trae Young and Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert. In the other deal, you kind of keep your flexibility where you're not going to have like fucking 5 max contract players on your team. Instead, you're going to retain players like Nas, you're going to have Dante, who could still come off the bench and play for you. But I definitely think this is a deal Minnesota should put their hands on, because Trae Young doesn't fit on a lot of teams, but I think he'd fit really well with Minnesota, just with the infrastructure and the way they play. I think he'd be a really welcome addition, and he'd help make a real difference there. Our next and final team is the Houston Rockets, who I actually think are probably the least likely to, put their foot in the Trae Young sweepstakes. I don't think they really need it, but if they want to get aggressive, because OKC hasn't looked the same as when they started the season, I don't think it really means much. But this might be, if you're the Rockets, you might think, oh, this is your time to strike, go attain some supreme talent so you could really win. And if all fails, Trae Young's probably just going to be a one-year rental if you're thinking about it from the Rockets perspective. But a deal would basically just have to be Fred VanVleet, Steven Adams, and one of your young players. In the situation, you'd give up Tari Eason. I think Reed Shepherd's shown you enough to where you want to keep him. Maybe you just give him up because you don't want to have two defensive liabilities at guard playing for you at all times. And I can understand that because Tari Eason has been really good this season. So maybe if you want to give up Reed Shepherd instead of Tari Eason, you could still do that definitely. And instead of Steven Adams, you could give up Clint Capella instead. That's kind of the two versions you could have with this deal. And if you're the Rockets, you just get a point guard. I think one of the things they have definitely struggled with is their offense gets really clunky when you're having like Amen bring up the ball, KD bring up the ball, or Sengun bringing up the ball. You don't really have that lead guard. I think Reed Shepherd has been good, but his playmaking hasn't been kind of what you've been desiring from your lead guard. Amen's been good. But I don't think he's gonna be like your point. Like in the playoffs, he's gonna have a hard time, I think. And he'd be more suited for a off-ball role where he's used as a cutter or a screener in some actions. And what better player to help set up your offense than Trae Young? You also add a secondary shot creator because it's been a lot of KD and Sengun isn't like this supreme shot creator. He isn't really like, he's like an average shot creator. He can get to his shot, but in the clutch, it's kind of difficult to give Sengun those post touches, especially when you need a quick bucket. And it might be too taxing on KD. He's like 37 now, so adding someone else who could kind of alleviate that pressure. And you also have, once again, the defensive infrastructure to really match Trae Young's deficiencies on defense. He is one of the worst defenders in the league, right? And you have a couple really good defenders on your team who could help out with that, I think. Which is why I'm kind of thinking maybe they want to keep Tariq instead of trading him away. But once again, this is more so teams than actual trade proposals. But I definitely think this is something that could be interesting, albeit I think it's pretty unlikely. And more so, in my head than anything. I just like the idea of it. I don't think it's really going to happen. And yeah, that's it for all the trades that I had and the teams that I think I could see Trae Young going to. And I'm really interested to hear what everyone thinks, because from what I've read on Twitter from articles and stuff, people aren't too high on Trae Young, especially those who are really connected to GM's front office, like the front office and stuff. And a lot of people say, Trae Young isn't going to have the value that he once had, or he isn't going to be traded for as much as he wants, especially with Atlanta seemingly giving him the option to choose where he wants to go. I don't think Atlanta is expecting too much in return, which is why these trades aren't too pick heavy or too pick dense, because it just seems like picks aren't going to be moved a bunch in this trade. Maybe one first rounder. I definitely don't think more than 2 first round picks are going to be moved in a Trae Young deal. But let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you think, which one you like, what team you could see him fit on if I didn't mention a team here. But yeah, thank you all for watching, guys. Take care.